API is something that is implicitly made available to all the places where you have the code to write, like in your lifecycle event handlers and other event handlers and the properties. So wherever you are writing code in UI, you are allowed to write code. This API object is available by default. API has several things like this. You see EM, common, icon, auth, router, entity, category, filter, calendar, remote, trigger, session, globals, DOM, API info, and source. Now, all of these are available, and each of them have some next level of functionalities available, and we are going through them one by one. The most common ones that we use quite often are EM, common, um, entity, filter, trigger, session, globals. These are the most commonly used APIs under the API. However, we can use others as well. Icon is something that we have used sometimes. We rarely use auth, router, um, category also very rarely used. Calendar we use only when we have to deal with the date time formatting. Um, Remote we use if we have to make a backend call directly. Um, Session for session management. DOM very rarely used. Um, App info again very rarely used. Source almost never. What is inside the EM? EM stands for Event Management Service, and I was saying that it has primarily three functions for use. Most commonly used are emit, register, and unregister. Register and unregister are life cycle uh, of the event handlers. It manages the life cycle of the event handlers, and emit is to emit a particular event. So emit uh, an event can be emitted by anyone who may not be the respondent. Okay, so an event can be triggered by anyone, and then the code or the logic which has registered to listen to that event will get invoked. Okay, so registration and unregistration right now is generally being done through the event manager configurations that we have in screens. So we generally do not call register and unregister, but we can. If we want to have such things, we can do that. Most of the time, what you have seen is emit, and then one of the other event handler, which is configured, will get into action when an event is happening. Now, emit only takes two arguments. The first one is a string, which is nothing but a unique ID for the event, because that is what is used for communication. So an event is happening which says this ID, event ID has occurred, and corresponding event data, any data, if there is anything, we can pass as the second parameter to the emit function. Okay, so whenever we are calling api.em.emit, we can pass. The first parameter is a mandatory thing, which is actually a unique string. And then second parameter is optional. It can be anything. It can be a string, it can be a number, it can be Boolean, or it can be a JavaScript object, anything that makes sense, that is related to this event, which will be passed on to the registered handlers. Okay, and whosoever has registered against this event ID will get notified about this event's occurrence, and it will be also passed the event data. And that data, as you know, is available in the event handlers of screen in the name of DATA, small letter DATA, implicit object, right? So we have been using that. Fine. So that is about the event management. Pretty simple, but very, very powerful feature of the platform. This is like the backbone of the whole um, user interface. Now, the same thing is available in the backend as well. So in backend, exact same API is available, and there, because there is no ready-made way of registering event handlers over there, like in UI, we may have to uh, call the register and unregister function. However, there is a substitute of that um, in the backend as well. So when we define triggers, we basically specify, okay, this trigger is applicable for this particular event. Okay. And whenever I initiate a trigger, whenever I send a trigger, I say this is my trigger event. So based on that, the platform will decide and find out which triggers and which actions of the triggers have to be executed. And then that will be executed. Now, whatever you pass alongside that trigger when you are sending a trigger will be passed on to um, those actions that are getting executed. Okay, so once again, there also you will rarely use the register and unregister function. You can sometime use emit, but in the backend, em api.em is used very rarely. Front end, it is used very heavily. Okay, so api.em is available in both places, front end and back end, but it is very frequently used in front end, very rarely used in back end, because back